Hey everybody, this is Sawtooth Frank, and this is episode 76 of the Soft Serve podcast. And we have our guest on tonight, Mr. Gutbucket. And I just wanted to say real quick, we were having some technical difficulties with Gutbucket's phone connection for about the first 40 minutes or so, and it gets much better after that. Please hang in there and try to listen to the whole podcast. We talk about some really interesting things related to the community, community businesses, and changes we can make as a result of this pandemic to kind of make sure that there's more opportunity and financial security for everybody in our country, not just the people at the top. So, please hang in there and try to listen to the whole podcast. We love you. Listen up. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this podcast belong solely to the podcast participants, and not to any participant's employer, organization, committee, or other group or individual. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. You know, for fun. So lighten up and enjoy. Oh, fun, Stomping Jen.
Euphonic.
Fun. Euphonic. Why are we talking about
Or
euphonics?
Phonesthetics. Phonesthetics.
Phonesthetics. That means orally pleasing.
Yeah, A-U-R-A.
Aurally. And I have
Auditorial.
oral pleasure on my mind.
Auditorial.
Welcome to episode 76 of the Soft Serve podcast. I am your host, Sawtooth Frank, and I'm here with my yawning co-host. What is your name?
Stomping Jen.
Say it louder.
Stomping Jen.
Stomping Jen. Welcome to the Soft Serve podcast. Let's be honest, folks. We're going to be talking a lot about this coronavirus situation, COVID-19. We have an interesting guest who is going to call in momentarily, Mr. Gutbucket. We're going to hear all about Mr. Gutbucket in a minute. But first,
Mr. Gutbucket.
We're going to ask him. But first, we want to thank you, first responders, healthcare workers, supply chain operators, your truck drivers, your grocery store workers, your fucking warehouse people, pharmacy people, all of you keeping us alive, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to do the show, and we're going to get Mr. Gutbucket on, Stomping Jen.
Go for it. Do it.
The Soft Serve Podcast. Creamy, delicious ideas without the creepy truck. If the creepy truck was going to deliver toilet paper, I'd be all for it.
You wouldn't run away from it.
I wouldn't run away. All right. You talk. I'm going to text Mr. Gutbucket and tell him to call in, okay?
Yeah.
All right, hold on.
I'm talking. How y'all doing out there in your safe
All right.
homes?
I texted Mr. Gutbucket.
Okay.
He should be calling in shortly.
Great.
Now, Stomping Jen,
Yeah.
what do we want to tell people?
I don't know.
Now, I'm going to be honest. I think this COVID-19 coronavirus shit has people thrown off their game.
I can't imagine why.
Our downloads are down slightly.
Well, because people don't have time.
Yeah, I'm not listening to as many podcasts.
I haven't even listened to our own podcast in 2 weeks. I don't have time.
I know. And this is one of the things. So we want to ask people, if you enjoy this podcast, we want to ask you, tell your friends about it, subscribe to it, right? So you automatically get it. So you
I'm in the meeting.
He is inside of our ears, Mr. Gutbucket. Hello, Mr. Gutbucket.
It is a pleasure to be here. You don't even know how happy I am to be here. How long I've waited to be part of the Soft Serve podcast.
Well,
oh my goodness,
Mr. Gutbucket, you're overstating your joy.
No. That's not true. No, I say nothing lightly. My littlest Gutbucket I said, I'm going to be on the Soft Serve podcast. And you know what she said?
Why, Daddy? Why?
No, that's the second thing she said. The first thing she said was Space Unicorn.
that's right.
I
Oh,
was like, yes,
That's right.
Space Unicorn. That's right. Yeah, she thinks that's the coolest name. The only disappointment she has with that is that she didn't think of it herself for her own podcast. Okay.
weird.
And then the next thing she said was, why did they want you on their show?
This is a child who clearly needs more discipline, Mr. Gutbucket.
Yeah. Well, she just likes to listen to podcasts with lots of swear words.
I'm just kidding.
She's 9, so she's got to learn them somewhere.
Any fan of the Soft Serve podcast is a friend of ours, and when we tell Space Unicorn that she has a fan, she will be over the moon.
Literally.
Awesome.
Out in space.
Awesome.
Yeah.
She's Space Unicorn. He didn't even get his own joke.
Who, me?
Yeah, you.
Yeah.
Over the moon.
Yeah.
Space Unicorn.
I could tell that he totally went over his head that he made a joke. And
Yeah, I didn't get my own joke. You're right, Stomping Jen. Thank you. Now, Mr. Gutbucket, when you and I were pre-communicating prior to the show, like I always do, I ask our guests if they want to select their own name. In this case, I didn't do that. You said to me, "Hey, don't I get a handle?" Because I was just going to use your regular name, Mr. Gutbucket. And you said, I want to be...
We can't have...
Right. Go ahead.
So-
No, I just said, well, we can't have that. We can't have that.
That's
we all
right.
have to have a handle.
That's right.
Yeah.
So Mr. Gutbucket said, I want to be Mr. Gutbucket. And I was walking, and I was doing voice to text. I said, that's fine. You can be... And what I thought I was saying was Mr. Gutbucket, but the voice to text... Stomping Jen translated it as Mr. Duckfucket.
That makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought that was funny.
Totally.
And the weird thing with that was my second choice. Duck fuck it.
Yes. So
French for duck fuck. You know?
yeah. Now, so Mr. Gutbucket, I was curious why you picked that particular name. Could you anything you want to tell us about it?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. So I'm known to play a sexually active musical instrument known as the saxophone,
Oh.
and in certain circles I'm known for that. And so back in the day, during the era of like the Chitlin circuit, as it was sometimes called, of early R&B music and early rock and roll and rockabilly, the style of really aggressive, growling, vocalese style of saxophone playing was known as Gutbucket.
Oh, cool.
Huh.
So I really, really like that era, and so hence the name. And it was better than what my youngest daughter wanted me to call myself, which was Poop Daddy.
I like Poop Daddy. Now, is there a...
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm all set.
I was going to say, is
Taking a sip.
is there an artist that you could recommend who exemplifies this style of Gutbucket playing that we could look up later or our listeners could listen to?
Yeah, that would be... See, this is the time of day when I forget names, and I can just remember things like... Well, first of all, for people a more recent player of that style, and I know that at least some of the people listening have a connection to New Jersey. So Bruce Springsteen's saxophone player forever and a day was Clarence Clemens.
Oh,
He
yeah.
was actually the first person that I really identified with when I was, way back in the day. So Clarence Clemens exemplifies that style of playing, for one.
I could totally see
And
that.
there were,
yeah.
and you know who played that style early, although it was so early, there's no real recordings of him doing that and stuff. But what most people don't know is that Ray Charles, who is obviously known as a piano player and as a singer, and was that for just about all of his substantive career, he did learn how to play saxophone, and predominantly played that style back before he became famous when he grew up in Florida.
Huh.
Cool.
And he learned from a guy. This is another guy you might want to look up, an alto player, albeit not a tenor player, but his name was Eddie Cleanhead Vinson.
Oh man, I love those names. Our guest last week was Ramblin' Blind Josh Pearson, and he was talking about the names of like old like blues players. And he had some really interesting ones that he had told us. So I like that. Eddie Cleanhead Wilson.
You totally got that wrong.
Oh, I got it wrong, Stomping Jen?
Yes.
Oh, what was it on Gutbucket?
Say it again.
I said Eddie Cleanhead Wilson. Stomping Jen is telling me I got it wrong.
Vincent. No, well, that's okay. That's okay. It's actually hard to hear over the phone. Vincent. So it's Vinson.
Okay. Vincent. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, and it's true, right? Like, especially when you go back to the early blues days, which is also just the early days of recorded music, the beginning of the record business.
Right.
Everybody was a blind lemon this or blind lemon chitlins, or some kind of like, there's very colorful names.
Yep. Well, welcome. Thank you for telling us a little bit about your chosen name.
I just have to interject for 2 seconds.
Go ahead, Stomping Jen. You're a co-host. You're allowed to do that.
Space Unicorn is currently learning the saxophone.
Yes, she is.
The saxophone, to be precise.
One thing we need more of in the world are strong women who play saxophone.
Yeah.
Now, is she? And forgive me, I don't know. I'm not being cute. Is she? Is that an alto saxophone she has? What is that?
Yeah.
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 Okay.
Yeah.
It's not the Kenny G one.
No, that's a soprano.
Okay. Yep.
That's not really a saxophone. That is a tool of the devil.
All right. Thank you for saying it, guys. I wasn't sure. I was afraid to say that.
It's really interesting.
There's one human being that sounds good on soprano saxophone, and he's been dead for almost a century. And he really was a clarinet player that ended up losing his clarinet, so he had to play soprano.
Yeah,
so that barely even counts.
Yeah. So I will say I always wanted to play the saxophone.
Yeah.
And when you get to choose your instrument way back in 4th grade, for me, I couldn't remember the name, or I'm not really entirely even sure. I think my parents thought I was saying trombone. I don't know. Anyways, I ended up with clarinet. And over the course of my very short musical career between 4th grade and basically senior year of high school, I did at some point pick up a saxophone and try to learn how to play it. And because I had been taught on a clarinet, I could never really figure out the saxophone because I kept wanting to play it like a clarinet, and the keys are all in different places. So even when Space Unicorn,
that's true,
when Space Unicorn needs help. Plus, I also played bass clarinet for a time in jazz, like in high school and stuff. So like I really am all twisted when I try to pick up the saxophone.
Yeah.
So, but
back in the day, if you said, like back in the day, way back in the day, if you said, I want to play saxophone, which of course inevitably most kids did because saxophone was associated with, thieves and knaves and prostitutes and, all those cool people.
All the good things.
They would say, all the good things, all the fun things. And they would say, okay, and they would hand you a clarinet first.
Why?
Because clarinet was considered like no lie now, it was literally called the quote unquote legit instrument. And saxophone was an illegit instrument because it was synonymous with, with jazz and with Storyville and the steamboats and whatever kind of thing. So of course everybody wants to play saxophone. It's from the devil.
Right.
It looks cool.
But it makes me so sad because like I want to like help her or like whatever. And like the notes are just all different. It's not.
Yeah, but you get the general idea, at least. I have never played an
I
instrument.
know how to blow into it because it's a reed instrument, just like a clarinet.
And it's hard. I tried blowing into it, and I almost passed out after about a minute.
Yeah.
It was hard.
Well, see, that's it. Then we have to have a saxophone party at your house.
Yeah. Yes.
A post-COVID-19
as soon as it doesn't potentially kill all of us, we can have a saxophone party.
Yeah, well, all right.
Sorry, I didn't mean to waylay us into like saxophone land.
No, that was interesting. Mm-hmm. So now we know a little bit about Mr. Gutbucket and how he got his name. So we're gonna go into news.
Okay.
Okay. Hang on, Stomping Jen. I know how much you love this.
Oh yes. It's like very serious.
Well, it's serious times, Stomping Jen.
The scream,
Mr. Gutbucket.
The punctuation on that.
We are in serious times right now. Now, last week we asked the question, is this really happening? And this week we're leading off the news with a statement, a declaration. Yes, this is happening. Right, Stomping Jen?
Yep.
And we've decided, Mr. Gutbucket, now hold on to your hat, that we think we might actually have COVID-19.
I'll wait. See COVID-19?
Yep, I'll wait for your reaction.
See COVID-19?
Yep,
not any other type of COVID-19.
Nope, not COVID-17, not COVID-19C, but the one and only COVID-19. Now, let me tell you how we think we have this, okay?
I can't wait to hear.
All right.
So interesting.
So I have to be very careful. We are family friends with somebody who is diagnosed positive with COVID-19.
They were diagnosed yesterday.
And our daughter slept over their house during the period where he was potentially infectious. Now, upon returning from that person's house, a few days or a week later, our daughter got sick. Right, Stomping Jen?
Yeah, but it wasn't
mild.
It was like a mild cold,
like a flu-like thing.
Yeah, like she was like, "I'm taking a sick day." It was like the first week that they were off, and we were like, "Ha ha ha! You're taking a sick day!" Like, ha ha ha.
Yep, and then one after the other, we all fell ill, and with these really kind of bizarre constellation of symptoms that you can't really say are the flu, you can't really say is a cold, like kind of
allergy. It's like
a weird, novel type of illness I've never experienced before. So we're thinking we're potentially infectious, right, Stomping Jen?
Potentially, but we're not going to get tested. So
I think we should.
For you yourself, Sawtooth Frank, there's no risk during that time period at any moment during the time that you thought you had these novel symptoms that you had either smoked bad pot
well, it's
or drank skunk locally brewed, of course, but skunk beer.
It's funny you mention that. So what I will say, so if you listen to the podcast, Stomping Jen and I are not drinking alcohol right now, but I did last week. I have some topical THC/CBD cream that I apply to my joints. Not the kind that I smoke.
I love the way you just like did that.
He said the word
clearing.
Joint with guffaw. Yeah.
Right?
No, but I don't.
I believe that was a guffaw.
But I don't. I had to laugh. I was seeing where this is going, like me slathering.
But you applied it to your joint.
Yeah, slathering joints with topical lotion. No,
but it's true because it's disgusting.
Yeah, you don't like the lotion, Stomping Jen.
I hate it.
Yeah,
it's
but
disgusting.
So anyways, I apply this stuff to my joints, and it's pretty mild. And that night, I also medicated with a very low dose of like a gummy, a little gummy, like an edible, 5 milligrams, nothing too heavy.
Edible, yeah, okay.
Yeah, nothing too heavy. And I woke up in the middle of the night pretty much with a full-blown anxiety attack. Right, Stomping Jen?
Oh, right.
And I told you.
This happened, yeah.
Yeah, I told you about it.
Yeah, but this has nothing to do with the...
Right. And then I was just I told you, I said, I'm jumping out of my skin, I'm having an anxiety attack. And then what did you do, Stomping Jen?
I don't know.
How did you calm me down?
What did I do? What does this have to do with COVID-19?
Tell Mr. Gutbucket how you calmed me down.
We just lifted some pellets.
We went and lifted some pellets.
It's fine.
We went out to the garage and lifted pellets, Mr. Gutbucket.
All right, can we move on from this? You know how much I love talking about this.
It was a good pellet lifting session. I appreciated it. And it calmed me.
What does this have to do
Is that what you guys call that? That's what you guys call that? I mean,
What?
we all have our names for it.
Yeah.
Kids don't know what we're
Lifting
really
pellets.
What does this have to do with you having...
It calmed me right down, and I was able to go back to sleep. So, Mr. Gutbucket asked me if I had some anxiety, if I ate some weed and had some anxiety. That's why.
Oh. I was like, how did we
Well,
get
here's the odd thing about
Yes,
that.
go ahead.
So I cannot say, I don't have bragging rights over, I don't want this to come out the wrong way, like, oh, I know so many people have already had it, man. But this one woman who has recently connected with us at my place of business has recently recovered from full-blown COVID-19.
Okay.
And so this is the only time during this entire interview and discussion, however we want to characterize this, that I'll be totally serious. So,
Yep.
so what I'm about to tell you is serious. So she, the shocking thing for her and her significant other are world travelers, and her spouse is from France, and they came back over, and they both had it, or at least she had it.
Yes.
And the odd thing with it was none of the symptoms that she presented at the time of her diagnosis, and almost half of her experience of going full-blown and being in the hospital, were any of the symptoms described as being COVID-19 symptoms, including, this was the big one for her that put her in the hospital. Her endocrine system went into hyperdrive, so as she described it, she would have this thrust of adrenaline for a brief period of time.
I've been having that.
Go ahead.
What the fuck? Okay, keep
Well,
talking.
and then that was followed by extreme exhaustion, almost to the point of feeling like you have mono for several hours. And this process for her repeated for 4 days until she couldn't take it anymore. And then she did start to have other symptoms, and then she went to the hospital, and they said, "Oh yeah, you tested positive for it."
Yeah, that is so fucked up. Let me tell you why. Stomping
It
Jen,
is.
you were going to say you're experiencing that?
Yeah, 100%.
So listen to this. I want to ask you both. Do you know where
turn off this terrible music?
He said it was a serious conversation.
Yeah, but what does that have to do
This
with
is the
music?
serious music.
Oh my god.
All right, hold on. Let me get rid of it.
We're not just lifting pellets here.
No. Now listen to this. Where are the adrenal glands located?
In your neck?
No.
Where?
On the tops of your kidneys. What did I tell you I was
your lungs?
experiencing a week and a half ago at night when I was lying down? My kidneys were like aching, and like right under my ribs, and I felt like I was going to jump out of my skin. I think that's my adrenal glands going crazy. Now it stopped. It has calmed down. I'm not experiencing that anymore, but that is so messed up that you said that. Is your friend okay?
I mean, the fact of the matter is, she recovered. She's 40 years old.
Okay.
And she's very athletic, and she recovered. But she made it clear to me, and this is just maybe about a week ago. So I clearly we've been taking this professionally. We've been taking it seriously, at least since the 13th. But she's the first person I've come across that has said, yeah, I just finished having it. And she convalesced for 20 days. And she said, being in the condition I'm in, the age I am, she said, you do not want to get it.
Yeah.
And you probably wouldn't even know if you had it anyways. And there's a chance you might have already had it over the last several months, because the fact of the matter is it's already been in North America for God knows how long.
I know, right?
And all of us have been presenting asymptomatic or just having light symptoms, and we fought it off. Maybe about a month and a half ago, I had a low-grade fever that never went full-blown. I didn't have any other symptoms, and that lasted for about 4 or 5 days, and I fought it off.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying I think I had it, but but the greater point here is, because of when we started to, as a country, take this really seriously, or not, this has been around us for a while. So now none of us really know, because we can't test absolutely everybody tomorrow
Right.
to find out who's had it, who has it, or who's never had it. That's sort of like, it's exacerbating the challenge to all this, right? Like how long are we supposed to stay in the house? We have no idea.
That's right. Yeah, and hopefully they'll get enough tests out there, the kind that can test for antibodies. So if you at least have had it relatively recently, it'll be able to pick it up. But I'm telling you, and going along with all of these other symptoms I was having, was this fatigue, like unbelievable fatigue.
Remember when I was like fucking exhausted?
But I would come home from work and have to take a nap.
No, I was working at home, barely doing anything, and I would get exhausted.
Yeah, I'm wondering.
I really think we all had it.
So we'll see.
Or have it, or something.
Yeah, I'm still not out of the woods yet. Well, geez, well, I'm glad your friend is doing better. I mean, I'm 46, Stomping Jen. How old are you?
42.
42. Gutbucket, how old are you?
I'm 44.
44, okay.
Oh, right in the middle.
All right, so good grief. Well, thank goodness. So we're still dealing with all of this here. Trump yesterday, so we're recording this on, Monday, April 30th?
No, not April 30th.
March 30th. Thanks, Stomping
You just
Jen.
advanced us a whole month.
Yep, confusion is another symptom of COVID-19. Trump extended the national shutdown, the social distancing rules, another month.
Right, to April 30th.
Until April 30th.
You got some of that right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, Mr. Gutbucket, how are you noticing people are doing with this social distancing they're supposed to be doing? Do you have any observations you can share with us about this?
Well, yeah. So it's a little dystopian, right? You have in our community. I actually live in a fairly dystopian community as it is. So some of what I'm describing isn't so unusual, but it ranges on a spectrum from people are camped out less than 6 feet from each other, by the way, I will add, in front of the ale house, waiting for the day that they can get back in to get their locally sourced brews, all the way to people who are jumping out of windows because the Armageddon is here.
Oh, my God.
And everything in between. Like, I don't know about you guys, but when there's challenging or interesting times like these, so we all have those go-to things we turn to. So music and art is one of those to me, and another one is history. So I've kind of spent a little bit of time looking at the last 2 or 3 times that major pandemics have happened.
Yeah.
In they're not in our time, mind you, but closest to our time.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at like 1918,
right,
there's a lot of similarities to both the mistakes and also some of the positive things we've done so far now. So and that gets a little frightening only from the standpoint of length of time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I do.
And so, so I was not discouraged by yesterday by finding out that, that we're not going to be open for business in every way, shape, or form as of Easter, Which, by the way, the reality is this: the states, many states, ours included here, the great Commonwealth, Massachusetts, right? We're relatively sober Puritans here, and we kind of figure we got a good thing going for it now, even though it's driving us crazy. Maybe staying indoors for a little while longer is probably gonna help people. So maybe we do that. But so in a place like here, say a scenario coming in a few months where maybe the federal government says, we're going to open up, and then our state says no, it's really almost in a way, it could potentially be a favor to certain employers, and I'm not going to name names here, but there's certain employers in the world who might want to use it as an opportunity to lay people off who don't want to go to work, as an example. So there's all these different things that happen in a really, really challenging environment like the one we're in right now, really unstable time period.
Yeah.
And, so.
Yeah. Now you're.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the reasons I wanted to chat with you, aside from, being a cool guy and we have friends in common, was that you're a small business owner, and I just kind of wanted
a community leader,
and I kind of wanted to just ask you, how are you dealing with all of this from a business owner perspective and a community leader perspective? I know that's a lot in one bite to chew off, so answer that however you want.
Well, I drink a lot. That helps. That helps a lot. I'm drinking right now.
What are you drinking?
Yeah, what are you drinking?
Right now, nothing fancy. Some Johnny Walker.
Okay, that's a good. That's
solid.
Red or black?
It's red. It's red. There's a limited supply here in our struggling mill town.
Okay.
Supplies have dwindled.
Desperate times call for desperate measures. I understand.
Yeah, it could be worse. After this, when we run out of this, then we're going to be drinking Poland Spring Scotch, and that's you don't want to do that, man.
Johnny Walker Red is perfectly serviceable Scotch. I used to drink it all the time, so I approve.
There you go. See?
Okay, so aside from drinking, what other? How else are you dealing with this? I imagine there's got to be, impacts on your business, and go as far as you want to go, or not far at all. It's up to you.
I appreciate that. It's been schizophrenic, and here's why. So I have a business that I outright own. This is a privately held business.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in music merchandising and music education. And I've owned it for 5 years. And the short story is, I bought this dress business, and we started to turn it around. My faculty and my sales team and I, and we've, for various reasons, which we can get into a bit later, we just had one struggle after the next, which really had to do with the changing environment in our industry and with hedge funds getting involved at the corporate level and all kinds of complicated issues. And at any rate, the pandemic has really been at a time when we were really trying to shift once again and find some success. It's pretty much killed off what little business we had left. And in fact, we made a decision actually just before the pandemic started to declare bankruptcy on that business.
Mm-hmm.
And we've started that process, which you can imagine we've tried to accelerate somewhat given the pandemic. And there's a number of strategic reasons for that. Not least of which is my attorney has indicated that we really want to file soon because they literally, starting next week, their one little office alone, he says, we anticipate literally over the next couple of months getting thousands of requests.
Yeah.
Not hundreds.
Yeah.
Thousands of requests for bankruptcy.
And, not all of which will file, mind you, but, people are weighing their options. And then on the other side of that, for the past year, sort of a project that has been on the side of my career for almost a decade, kind of, it gained a lot of momentum. And in the end, I actually, as I returned back to it from time away from it, I took the opportunity to become its paid executive director,
Mm-hmm.
and that business is a nonprofit in our community here that is a regionalized nonprofit, and we are a business incubator.
Right.
And so this past year, I used that time to create a unique program for it, and we've been implementing that program, and it's gained a lot of momentum. So on one half of the time I spend away from my family during the workday has been in a disaster movie that's been moving at just a chaotic pace, almost to the point that you just have to laugh. And then the other side has been truly, I got to tell you, cathartic, right? Because, and also just strange because I spend my days at my incubator advising people and helping people start businesses. And on the other side, I've got creditors calling me on my other phone line, wanting to find where I live and bomb my house.
Yeah.
So, now I don't laugh at that because I'm, it's gotten to me mentally or anything like that, but it's, over the years, I've managed to sort of separate myself from my businesses, so I don't. For the most part, I'm not emotionally tied to them, so it doesn't wear on me as a person. And you have to do that in these times for sure. You know what I mean? Otherwise, your mental health is really at a high risk. But yeah, man, it's been strange.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can,
and there's, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I'm thinking about the business incubator,
and all those fledgling businesses.
And well, the ones that may be fledgling right now or may not survive this, but I feel like that function is going to be essential after we get through this, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be really important in helping restore the economy. Like looking down the road.
Well, and so, my partners and I were talking about this a couple of days ago where, if, to put it in perspective, and I don't know if this is right or wrong, this is all speculation, right? We're all speculating at this point, like on a daily basis, because things are changing on a daily basis.
Right.
I don't, as much as I never give up hope, I'm an optimist, and as long as there are man-made problems, we can always solve them, right? Now, that said, this pandemic, as bad as it's going to get, it's probably going to come in waves, and it's probably going to be for a year or two.
Yeah.
It's not the straw that's going to break the camel's back as far as a lot of these other political, social, and economic problems that were already here before the pandemic hit.
Right.
I don't think. I would love it if it did. I would love us to take a close examination holistically about a whole bunch of all this stuff, right? But I don't know that that's what's going to happen at a national level, especially. But there's, at the local level, there's a way for us, there's a window of opportunity that we're going to have where there's never been a time before this for us and some of our more progressive ideas about how we change things in our region that, people are getting sick and tired of being sick and tired, I guess, right? That's what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. And so they're listening. And they're willing to listen to solutions that they haven't previously been willing to listen to.
Right.
But there's a window of opportunity on that because we're going to return back to some sort of normal, right? And then people are going to be like, yeah, whatever.
Right.
But right now, people are starting to say, holy shit, first of all, we're going to health crisis. But right after this, we just spent almost $3 trillion pumping that into the stock market, and each infusion was just evaporated in a matter of hours, and they had to close the market.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we now have some kind of a economic downturn that might make 2008, 2009 look like child's play.
Mm-hmm.
And it might look more closer to the Great Depression. Mm-hmm. So the question is, what are we going to do about it? And right now, for us anyways at the incubator, it's about rapidly, even more than we already were, building our war chest, and to put, I hate military euphemisms, but that's what it is, and put that money, because we're going to need that money for some of these more progressive ideas that we have for the region. And I think that we'll have more people in powerful positions willing to listen, because it's pretty clear that the average person around, at least around my part of Massachusetts, which is one of the poorest parts of Massachusetts, that our elite, our leadership, not right across the board, but a lot of our leadership has just run out of ideas a long time ago.
Yeah.
And they're just trying to hold on to power any way they can.
Yeah, they're about maintaining the status quo and their own comfort and their own way of doing things.
Yeah, and I talked about this a little bit last week, I think, like this navigating this, like being part of a local government right now, like,
and a small business owner.
But like watching people absorb this information, and like it should have happened all at once, but it couldn't have, because people's heads would have exploded, if you get my drift. Like, people need to like inch their way into like, oh my God, this is really happening. And, like, is this happening? Yes, it's happening. Now we have to do something about it.
Well, it goes back to what Gutbucket was saying, right? I mean, if you are familiar with history, right, contrary to what our president says, anyone could have anticipated something like this happening. And even if you pay a moderate surface level amount of attention to media, there have been books, podcasts, movies in the last 10 years.
Knowledgeable people talking about
talking about the risk that a pandemic poses to the world and our country specifically, and how we're not prepared.
Right. But it's, so it's interesting, Mr. Gutbucket. Are you Mr. Gutbucket or just Gutbucket? Anyways.
He's Mr. Gutbucket. How dare you?
If you, because it's you, if you want to call me Gut, hey,
Mr. Guts.
Well, the bucket. it's all good.
But we operate in a lot of similar, kind of mindset. So like, here I sit, having tried to work on community projects and building community and figuring out ways to bring together community and like creating events to do that and everything. And it's like, what does that look like moving forward? Like when people are like going to be reemerging from the little cocoons that we've now been forced into to keep ourselves all safe. Like, are we all going to be scared of each other when we all come out? Like, are we going to want to be together in big crowds? Like,
not me.
It's a little nerve wracking. I see like all the work that I've been putting in for the last however many years, probably a decade, like you. And, it's like, oh my God, it's just, I know people online who just, literally overnight their entire revenue stream is evaporated into thin air. It's like, it's
and at a
crazy.
time when a huge portion of small business, regardless of industry, first of all, and this is one problem with business, not of any size, is that almost all business now is low margin business, right?
Yeah, of course.
There aren't, so I'll give you a comparison, right? An example of that, 50 years ago in my chosen profession, music merchandising, the average net margin on cost of goods sold. So, you sell a saxophone for, $1,000, and you can expect at that time, maybe 50 years, well, not even 50, maybe 25 years ago, that about 60% of that $1,000 was in your pocket to pay expenses.
Right.
And after expenses, either the owner might take, or the business would take $200 of that.
Right.
And jump to the era we're in now, and this is not unlike, and this isn't just retail, this is almost all business. There are very few high-margin businesses left in America. The two biggest ones being finance, specifically investment banking, and legal, right? And some segments of legal aren't business. But now, so at the end of the retail portion of my business, you were lucky if you could take home a net margin of 40% of gross.
Yeah, I have a
And
yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say I have a client. She opened in October a retail operation, and she's like, "When can I pay myself?" I'm like, "I don't know. You just opened a children's bookstore. I don't know when you can pay yourself.
You're never going to pay yourself.
I don't know how to tell you. I don't know how to answer you that question. It's all going to be
exactly
how successful
well,
you
and
are."
so what? And it's funny, Stomping Jen, because then there's a lot of consultants that will come out and they'll say, "Well, here's the thing. You're not in the business to sell guitars, man. You sell guitars and you take a loss at selling every one of our guitars so that you can sell music lessons."
Mm-hmm.
And for the last 20 years in our business, and again, I'm just using our business, but you could just apply this to whomever. So then you say, well, that makes sense. It's experiential. The net margins, in fact, are really high. And you've got the right relationship with your faculty. It's a really, you're paying them well. Everyone's happy, right? And it's recurring, right? Every month, someone's paying us tuition. But here's the problem: that only works in an environment where there's enough of a middle class or upper middle class
and
with two very important things. They need to have money, but they also need to have time.
Yep.
Yeah.
So if you're in, say, sort of a place far away from a major metro area, say like Belchertown, right? And you say, well, the best, lessons for my kid are in Worcester.
Yeah.
Well, you even if you have the money, you might not have the time, or even if they're in Amherst, that you might not have the time in your schedule with two parents working to go. See what I'm saying?
Yep.
Over the years, and I would speak in different parts of the country at industry meetings and stuff, and I'd say these things.
Yeah.
I was interviewed once for a trade magazine, and they asked me at Christmas. They asked one business from every state, and they happened to call on ours. And they said, "What's your biggest challenge?" And usually people give answers like, "Oh, we ran out of ukuleles a week before Christmas," or something like that. And I said, "You know what? I'm going to get at it this time." And I said, "Well, my biggest problem is the evaporating middle class.
Yeah,
I need people to have time and money." And they printed that. And they printed this. This usually comes out just before Christmas of that season. And I spent about 3 days after Christmas. There's this wonderful time in retail between Christmas and New Year's where it's like a vacation a little bit, even though you got to be in the store. And I started getting emails and phone calls from different parts of the country. And they didn't say who they were. It was just they started yelling things into the phone like communists. And things like that. And I thought, well, I guess I struck a nerve. And the irony is I'm striking a nerve with fellow retailers who just aren't, they're just afraid to publicly say, to just sort of call out the elephant in the room,
Yeah.
So I guess my point is, you can't be afraid to call out the elephant in the room.
Right.
Because the problem's never going to go away unless we start to just call it what it is.
And how do we get the middle class back time? That's a question. Stomping Jen and Gutbucket.
It's crazy.
I hear that Stomping Jen already has all the answers. I'd love to hear what she has to say about
Yeah. Now, Mr. I want to take a pause 1 second, Gutbucket, because you're dropping some important information here on us. And your phone line sounded a little crunchy to us on that last segment. Stomping Jen were making eyes at each other. Are you on your computer or are you on a phone?
No, I'm on my phone, but I will say that some of the things that Stomping Jen was saying were also a little crackly.
Okay, can you text me are you on a home, like a landline or a cell phone?
I'm on a cell phone.
Can you text me your cell phone number? I'm going to try actually calling you direct and bypassing this portal we're using, and we will just try to reconnect with you, see if we get a better call.
Yeah, right on. Okay, so I'll drop and I'll text and then I'll wait for your call.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, cool.
Yep. Okay. All right, Stomping Jen. We're going to take a little pause.
Okay.
That's pretty scary, what he's saying.
Mm-hmm. Time and money.
Time and money.
Time and money, and people calling him a communist.
Did somebody call him a communist?
Yeah, you couldn't
I
hear
missed
him.
that.
I know, you couldn't hear him.
I missed that.
I could hear him.
We're going to have to address that.
Yeah. The people calling him a communist.
Yeah. Hopefully.
Because he was calling out the truth. And
Yeah.
people don't want to face the truth.
All right, let's call him. This will be better.
You think so?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
it's
this is
way
much better.
Yeah.
So Gutbucket.
Well, that is much better. Wow. I
Yeah.
didn't realize how bad the Zoom line was. Yeah.
Yeah.
How come it was so bad last time?
I don't know. Probably because everybody in the world's on freaking Zoom. So we're not going to do that again. It's all right. What I missed, Gutbucket, was Stomping Jen said you were being called a communist. I totally missed that.
I've been this is not something that happens all the time. And having spent almost 20 years, if not 20 years on stage, having shit thrown at me in almost all the lower contiguous 48 states, I'm not lying.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's okay to people. But I occasionally am accused of being either a communist or a Marxist or generally a radical leftist, and which I find funny considering that, I run a business incubator and I espouse all of the cornucopia of positives that is capitalism.
Right.
It even just sounds good, doesn't it? Capitalism.
Not to me. I mean, I'm not quite a communist, but I feel like I'm definitely a socialist. And after this whole fucking pandemic fiasco and the exposure of exactly how shallow and weak our ability to care for people is, and how for-profit healthcare is a fucking paper tiger. I don't want to say we need to somehow seize this moment and really make a change. The kind of changes that Bernie Sanders was advocating for. And I'm afraid, I'm afraid, what I'm afraid of is we're going to get on the other side of this. And like we always do, people are going to say,
forget.
Things need to change. We can never go back. And that's exactly what we're going to do.
Right back to the way we were.
That's my fear.
Well, and so, a moment ago, and you're right. And a moment ago, we were talking about, what were we talking about? It was really fucking good.
Your when you went to the trade show and you.
Well, yeah, and the idea that, remember, I was talking about that window of opportunity, right, where a few more people than normal in in positions of power are likely going to want to hear a different story, right?
Yeah,
and that's kind of what you're expressing right now, and we have to seize it. On the 15th, over and over again, Joe Biden in the debate kept saying over and over again, what we need is solutions, not revolution. And I'm sitting there and I'm saying to myself, actually, the solution that we need is in fact
a revolution.
Yeah.
Yeah, is revolution. If not now, then how bad does it have to get now?
Well. Yeah.
What this process right now is exposing, first of all, pandemics like this are natural, and they're going to happen.
Right.
The fact that it's happening while we're here, and we've never really had to experience. Our lifetimes have coincided with, albeit a downturn, at least from our perspective, economically, but generally speaking. This isn't our grandparents or our great-grandparents' time period. Right. You know what I mean? As if the labor movement strife wasn't enough. They get hit with a pandemic. Oh, by the way, you're going to go fight World War I. Right. Let's see, what else? Oh, if you were in Russia, well, you're screwed because there's a revolution going on. But before that, most of the country's starving. The world was going through a similar phase like we are now, of a lot of strife and instability, right?
Yeah.
So this is also about us as a people learning, and I say us, globally, we're learning how to deal with something we haven't had to deal with before. And that's entirely, I'm waiting for one leader somewhere at the municipal, state, or federal level just to say, in the first place, the pandemic we're dealing with, there are issues stemming from it that are man-made problems. But, first and foremost, this is a natural occurrence that, Mother Nature's in charge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we need to recognize that. And I think if we do, our attitude towards this whole thing sort of shifts a little bit.
Yeah, and the only one who has said anything remotely like that is Fauci, Dr. Fauci. He kind of has been, at least in the last week, telling people we don't make the timelines, the virus makes the timelines, right? We have to listen to the virus.
Right.
This is going to sound incredibly callous. Even though 200,000 people dead is incredibly tragic, and especially since a percentage of those was likely preventable, if Trump had acted earlier, I fear it's not going to be enough to make an impact on people to really make it obvious how much we need a revolution in the way we administer healthcare in this country, and how we feed the poor, how we capitalize every fucking thing in our society to try to squeeze every fucking dollar out of it. I'm friends with somebody online who posted something today about Airbnb owners who are complaining because they've bought up a lot of free real estate in their communities, and now they're going broke and they can't pay their mortgages because they can't rent all of these homes and apartments that they have because nobody can move around, and they're complaining. But housing is a human right. Right? Shelter is a human right. If you try to capitalize that and you're removing those spaces that people need to live from communities, to profit, it's just wrong. In my view.
I share in your. I think I'm going to guess I share in what you guys espouse fundamentally, but I share right now specifically in this idea that. That this, the people who hold the true power for our country, and many of those people also are part of the power elite globally in business and in government. Their lives their professional lives are spent a lot in dodging bullets. And so this is a bullet they're trying to dodge, right? And so it becomes a crap game. And this pandemic is exposing, although, again, it the worse it gets, it exposes it to more and more people. So the question is it going to expose it to enough of disgruntled people who have their eyes open? But generally speaking, it's exposing us to all of the problems of, what happens with a privatized system. So it's not just healthcare, but, it's all the major systems, energy,
education,
food. Yeah, exactly. Well, and now we see all the weaknesses in a privatized system, in a healthcare system where we've determined. Generally speaking, I'm painting with a broad brush now, but generally speaking, we determine the number of beds by what is profitable or could be profitable for that given community or region. That's almost never going to be enough beds for when the worst case scenario happens. Ironically enough, then some would say, well, then it's very simple. We take over the public spaces for those beds. On its merit, on its sort of ground level, I'm okay with that. But isn't it interesting how the privatized side people instantly want to then take over the public trust to make up for their inequities, right?
That's
so
right.
And this mimics itself over and over again all over the place. We also see the weakness in a debt system. In other words, fundamentally, our economic system for some time now is based on I become in hock with my credit card or with my loans and so forth to smaller, relatively community-based financial institutions who in turn are in hock to larger financial institutions who are in hock to ever larger institutions until you get to investment banking. And we divide those debts up into smaller pieces. Right. We then reconstitute them in mixed pieces. We call these,
credit.
Bundles.
Yeah, this is the whole credit default swap disaster. I think you're describing.
Well, I am, and in fact, we do this with not just housing debt, but we do it with all kinds of debt.
Right.
And even though we would have loved to have restricted it from the last recession, almost none of it was made illegal, and anything that was made illegal, we're just ignoring those laws anyhow. So all of this was allowed to recur. It never stopped, really, and it's been happening all along for the last 12 years, 13 years. So, and it's about all of it is about to burst, and even if it wasn't, there are a number of other economic and social reasons to not continue that process.
Yeah.
When hedge funds are allowed to take over entire segments of an industry and use those dummy businesses as a tax shelter and infuse those businesses with tens or hundreds of millions of dollars of cash. And the end result is that all other small independent business in that industrial sector cannot compete. And when they do try to compete aggressively, the corporate managed competitors use the courts against independent businesses, or any of the other bullshit tactics that are used, and then it just hollows out the entire industry. It's really just a 21st century form of the extraction economy that built the country, where we extracted from the earth, and when we ran out of that, we would extract people. And when slavery becomes illegal, we just simply extract labor in the form of wage slavery in mills. Right. And when that becomes a problem, we extract intellectual property from people. I mean, think about it, right? Our incubator builds business plans, and then we seek leaders to run those businesses. Now, one of the reasons why we do that is because we're disgusted by this process by which universities have pitch contests and you have Shark Tank and all this. Yeah. We're training young people to anticipate that you're supposed to come up with some really cool ideas. Yeah. And then we're gonna pay you an award, and we're gonna take over that idea, that intellectual property. Right. And almost none of it's ever gonna see the light of day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have a friend who went through that whole process.
We do?
Down in Springfield. Yeah.
Who? All right, never mind.
Well, I mean, I want to say, but I don't want to say it on air.
All right. Tell me later.
Yeah.
All right.
But somebody who went through VVM and nothing came of it.
VVM is Valley Venture Mentors.
Venture Mentors, right? And, she didn't get anything out of it.
Okay.
Do you know who I'm talking about? Yeah.
Well, and you have this happening, and it's the equivalent, okay, of let's get really detailed. That's the equivalent of it's 1913, and I'm a white guy from New York City, and I travel to the Mississippi Delta, and I'm just driving around, man, and I'm down dirt country roads, and I see this black guy sitting on a porch, and he's playing guitar. It's between shifts out in the cotton field, and whatever he's playing, I don't really have to like it or not, but I can sense it is the real deal. And I know I can sell a lot of records if I record that. And I walk over to that man and I say, hey, man, I tell you what, I'll give you $10 if you just sing your little song and pick your guitar right into this little machine right there.
Yeah.
And the guy in the porch says, oh, that sounds like a good deal. Yeah. And he does it. And then the white guy goes back to New York City and makes 1 million records with it.
Fucking Elvis Presley, you motherfucker.
And it's the beginning of the record business, right? So it's so much of our economy
Mm-hmm.
is based on what I call the extraction economy. It's not an original idea to me. I shouldn't say it's my, I call it, but we need to get away from that.
So what is the solution? How do we get away from this debt-based extraction economy? Where do we go? Let's say we get on the other end of this pandemic and we all wake up and we say we've got to do things differently, Mr. Gutbucket. Lead us. What are we going to do?
All right, I'm reaching deep into the bucket.
Okay.
I'm not going to profess to have all the answers.
Sure.
I will tell you what we're doing. And part of it is encouraging in a variety of different ways. Well, first of all, in the incubator, we have this leadership candidacy program, which I just described, right? So instead of us awarding money and resources to somebody, to a business plan that probably doesn't have any relevance to the current marketplace we're in, we're writing business plans and we're saying, all right, who are the prototypers? Who are the manufacturers? Who are the engineers? Who are the service people in our area? Who are the artists?
Right.
What does our marketplace look like? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're writing business plans that we feel for those and a variety of other reasons are going to be relevant to this marketplace. And then we're going out, and the contest, if you will, is to seek people who want to be the CEOs of these companies that we're creating.
Okay.
And we have money and we have resources to put toward that. In other words, we're getting rid of the bullshit. My partner in all this, one of the mentors that's been a key part of building the incubator, his name is Dave LaBelvic. And Dave keeps using, because Dave and I and you guys too, we're all around the same age, right? So we probably all have seen The Real World, right?
Yep.
Back in the day when MTV played, music and The Real World. And he's like, what we're doing is we're getting to a point where we stop being polite and we start getting real, right?
Right.
So everything
Hashtag
we're doing,
real world.
full disclosure, right? We're in north central Massachusetts,
Yep.
and our region is roughly from a town called Devens.
Yep.
There used to be the military installation all the way to Orange.
I was
North Quadrant.
I was stationed at Devens
Mm-hmm.
when I was in the military, Gutbucket. So I know the area well.
Right on.
Yep.
So formerly major manufacturing. Believe it or not, there's 300 or 400 manufacturers still here. There's still a lot of vibrant stuff going on here. The problem is it doesn't employ people. And for various reasons, particularly in the urban communities in this region, there's a certain member of the well-established people in these cities, that frankly, the status quo works for them because folks are willing to work for, $8 an hour.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you got non-townies that have moved out here over the years, my family included, because, there's cheap housing and because we lived in my wife and I, our case, we lived in Lowell for 10 years before this. And so we know we wanted to be in a mill town, but we wanted to be at the beginning of the process, not the end.
Right.
And what we didn't realize is that if you do that, you can potentially get yourself shot. And no, I'm exaggerating only slightly. It's contentious. Let me put it this way: we've earned the right to be citizens of the city we live in.
Right, but am I hearing you in saying you feel like there's some portion of the people who do view you as the white knight gentrifiers riding in to take over their city?
The irony is, so there's a little bit of that,
Yeah.
And then there's also the, listen, man, this ain't none of your business, move on.
Right.
You were supposed to move to Amherst. You were supposed
Right.
to move to Northampton.
Yep.
There's plenty of that around. I live in a very red part of what's otherwise surrounded by a very blue part of the state.
Mm-hmm.
And that anger really comes from decades and decades of under-resourcing and under-educating people who are otherwise very well-educated and very smart.
Mm-hmm.
But they've been so angry for so long, they just don't know where to center that anger anymore.
Yeah.
Remember that particularly for our city, which was mostly centered for 150 years on furniture making, unlike the cities around us.
Mm-hmm.
People here, it's an oral tradition, not unlike jazz music or any other folk tradition, right? You learn your craft by doing and by mentoring from people that have been doing it longer than you.
Right.
Apprenticeship. Passing it down.
Yeah, like apprenticeship in a way.
Right. And I
Yeah.
got to tell you, that lasted in our city until 15 years ago. That,
Yeah.
Like, deindustrialization didn't happen here 100 years ago like it did in cities around us like Fitchburg or Greenfield or
Mhm.
Athol. It happened, the end of it really happened 15 years ago. It was
Yeah.
really in the last recession. And it didn't happen because the businesses here weren't successful. It happened because the owners that were they were privately held for a long period of time. And beginning at the end of the 80s, they started to sell the businesses to hedge funds and to other publicly traded entities.
Mhm.
And those entities made them more efficient. In some cases, they even added employees
Right.
and made them profitable. And right at the moment that they were the most profitable, by and large, they sold them off to liquidate them and make and turn a profit off of the liquidation.
Jesus fucking Christ.
So, and that's not every single business. For each business, every entity or family, in some cases, had to make a decision. And that's the other thing I want to say here is for every business, there is a different story, just like for every person, there's a different story. But there are some patterns. And one of those patterns, at least for the publicly traded set, is this idea, they're like cockroaches. They just come in to create
Mhm.
profitability so that they can liquidate that profitability, and they'll make a fee off of every transaction that's
Right.
a part of that. And then communities throughout the United States or Canada or other places are just left in the dust.
Yeah.
So this is all like a huge sidebar to what you initially asked me. So besides the program
Mhm.
at our incubator, it's basically our rule of thumb is we take a strong look at everything that's fucked up and that's been done wrong for a long period of time. And then we just do the opposite.
Yeah.
And then, especially well-established and well-moneyed people say, well, shit, that's all well and good, but, how the fuck do you do that? Because that's
Right.
just bullshit.
Yeah.
And then we say, and we look, no, it's not bullshit because, see, we're not part of the money set, so we got nothing to lose.
Right.
So when I say we're going to go off and we're going to go do this program, we've got great support. In our case, at the incubator, I've got great support from our board.
Mhm.
We've got good mentors. We've got people who are true believers. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And what's happened is more and more pressures keep being put on just the citizens around us and the other businesses around us.
Right.
And they're starting to say, maybe this old system ain't working anymore.
Yeah.
But that's really at the crux of it. And beyond that, we've looked, regionally, we're looking not too far from where Stomping Jen and Sawtooth Frank hail, just north of you in the North
Mhm.
Quabbin region,
Mhm,
which is
mhm.
our western
Yep.
area. And then east throughout, we've been looking at different opportunities. But it starts with deeply understanding, which takes time, deeply understanding where the wounds are in each one of those cities and towns, and then really understanding the localized economic environment that is there, and then saying, well, what are the different things that we might be able to do in this community that might work?
Yeah. That seems a lot.
It's detailed work. It's tough work.
Yeah.
This takes a long time. It's not. It's everything that is not short term and is careless thinking and is thoughtless. And it's exactly why everyone around us has told us we're crazy and it's never going to work. But in these times, it's exactly why I know it's going to work.
But it seems a lot harder than a socialist police state.
It seems what?
A lot harder than a socialist police state. I think that would be easier.
That's what you think we need.
Yes. That's just what you're describing sounds like a lot of hard work.
It is a lot of hard work.
Yeah. I think we need a kind socialist benefactor to
Are you talking about Bernie?
run a socialist police state. Yes, Stomping Jen. I would be a great socialist police state leader.
You have to promise me something though.
Yes.
The uniforms have to be fucking kick ass.
You know they will, Mr. Gutbucket. They'll be the best uniforms suitable for old people bending over to pick things up, but with a stretchy fabric. I'm a big fan.
Like
Yes.
buttocks, exposed buttocks.
Mr. Gutbucket. I'm a big fan of these fabrics they offer at Old Navy. They look like blue jeans, but they stretch like spandex. I wear them.
Something, Jen. Do you let Sawtooth Frank shop at Old Navy?
Yes. Yes, she does.
Do I let him? He doesn't let me buy him anything.
No. Anyways, yeah. No.
Wait. There was something more behind there. Do you not? You don't.
Oh, that's all I wear, Gutbucket, is Old Navy.
Yeah.
No,
I did not know that.
Yeah,
Is
no.
Old Navy a bad place to shop at? Fast fashion, right? Fast fashion.
They do not pay good wages. They do not pay a living wage. They are not unionized, and they offer shit for health insurance. Joe Biden shops at Old Navy. That's who shops there, Stomping Jen.
Old Navy, the solution, not the revolution.
Yes. And if you think that motherfucker is going to win the Democratic primary, you got another thing coming to you. We could still win. We can still go all the way. We've got to win Wisconsin.
Isn't it ridiculous? I don't even know. Like, is the campaign what? It moved online? Is that?
Yeah, it's all online now.
But like, who's paying attention? Yeah. Everybody's freaked out and buying toilet paper.
Yeah.
So listen. Now I know I'm in good company here with Bernie supporters.
Yes. And Bernie Sanders himself, Mr. Gutbucket.
And right. And even Mr. Sanders is here.
Yes.
So forget all of the contentious nature of this political season. It must be tough to run a campaign during a pandemic.
Oh my God!
You gotta appreciate the people. Like think of the 20-somethings that are running this campaign right now, and they're like, "Oh, sure, pandemic." Just add that to the list.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually quite worried that this is going to be a fucking Trojan horse for Trump to fuck around with the election in the fall.
There's something interesting because my wife and I, that's it, when we do talk about politics, that's been a lot of our conversation has been, are we even going to have an election in November?
Hard to say. I mean,
we have like a select board member leaving, and like we need to have a local election. We don't even know like what's going to be. Yeah.
Well, one thing I was going to say, just to kind of wrap up our community and business part of the conversation, was I think one potential panacea to a lot of this is having worker-owned businesses. Mm-hmm. We've seen, and I think out here in Western Massachusetts, we have a couple, more than a couple. One big company, I mean, there's been a couple of companies, really big national companies that have turned over to worker-owned businesses. And I think that's one thing that might help fight against some of this extraction economy and, the stuff that Mr. Gutbucket was talking about. So, I don't know. I'm not, this is not my forte.
It's not?
No.
There are no two cooperatives or other types of employee-owned scenarios alike. Mm-hmm. But it's funny because what you see, generally speaking, are the employee-owned business models, and the businesses themselves. They all seem to be relatively successful on the surface, and that's because the ones that survive do, in fact, they have a lot of success. What you don't see are the ones that fail.
Right.
I can't tell you right now statistically what exactly is the failure rate of those businesses as compared to other business models. I'm going to guess that it tracks similar to other business models. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? There, in certain circles, that concept generally is treated like, oh, it's exotic, or it's, those things are impossible. They never work.
Yeah.
That's just simply not true.
Yeah. And what I guess I think the thing I'm trying to express is not whether or not the business will be successful or not, because I understand that, like, businesses rise and they fall, and, that happens. But what I was thinking about is if there's any firewall we have against corporate raiders, like, hopefully it's that if the employees of a company, like, feel like they own it themselves and feel like the value in that company comes from their work, and their investment and their production, and maybe that's not for sale,
Well, there's a great example of this, Sawtooth Frank, in Clinton, Massachusetts.
Sure.
There's a medical device plastics manufacturer called Nipro.
Okay.
And the gentleman, when I first came to these shores that I'm in now,
Yep.
the gentleman that at that time ran Nipro was a privately held company, and he had been there forever.
Mm-hmm.
And the town depended on this mill. Thousands of people working there.
Yep.
And when I first came to this region, he was in the process of creating what they call an employee stock option.
Okay.
Company, right?
Yep.
Which he successfully did. The process was by and large a successful one. It preserved a community. It preserved the company,
mm-hmm.
and the employees decided, and executive management decided, after the ESOP was created, they took their asset class, the value that they had in the company, and they partnered with a Florida-based company that really liked the product menu that they had and their capacity as a company, and so bought them. And to this day, it's successfully run. They've created this even larger company between locations in Florida and in Clinton, and I think they have a couple other locations in different parts of North America. And it's successfully running, and thousands of people work for that company. And the owner, Gordon, ended up doing all right. Everybody won.
Yeah.
Everybody got something. And in more ways than one, there were a bunch of different measurables about what success, how success was measured in that case. And this should have been the story of Toys R Us as an example, right?
Yeah.
Instead, the owner of Toys R Us made a fateful mistake, and he sold it to a hedge fund, and then, a much different story happened. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, everything you've said is not wrong.
Yeah.
It's just that we're not doing these things
Right.
a lot. There's a number of reasons why we don't do them. The number of reasons is varied, because there's a lot of different people with a lot of different ideas on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
But that having been said, the reasons why they do it are all very simple, and most of them have to do with greed and avarice.
Yeah. Yep. It's true.
We all make choices.
Yeah. But, I think in the example you provided where I think if the employees and the workers of that company and that were helping sustain that mill town, primarily made that decision themselves based on whatever this company from Florida presented them and told them, then, that's a decision that the workers and the community then take responsibility for, right? Versus, a couple of people at the top who are, trying to make money. I don't know. I mean, that feels a little better to me in some way.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, it's every business is different, and
mm-hmm.
the outcomes become very different.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to be careful on purpose, other than, one thing I don't like to do is put words in the mouths of people whom I don't know, or I don't know their exact situation.
Yeah.
Why they made the decision
Sure.
they did. We can talk clearly about consequences, though.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
mm-hmm. Yep.
So I might not be able to fault an individual business owner or a peer of mine for a decision he or she makes, except I can fault the outcomes. And, we've just been in this process in this company of liquidating tangible value, and we turn it into liquid cash that somebody then takes.
Mm-hmm.
But increasingly, for a very long time, that liquid cash doesn't make it back into the tangible economy.
Yeah.
And we've long since gone through this process of, we don't, the economy isn't really most of us, right? It doesn't need us. We're when we are needed, it's as collateral for gambling on the stock market, that is, right? In our 401ks and whatnot.
That's right.
But they really don't even need that. They're trading money for the sake of money and creating value arbitrarily. Our Fed does that, right? So we, at the beginning of this past month, roughly, I think from the 13th through the 16th or 17th, somewhere in the neighborhood in 3 different cash infusions. I think there were 3 different cash infusions.
Yeah.
One was $500 billion.
Yep.
The weekend we saw $1.5 trillion, and then after that, $800 billion.
Yep.
These were cash infusions into treasury bonds, and the point was into the stock market. So the point was to get this money into the stock market, and it would be traded, and then it would buoy the value of the dollar.
That's right.
And with each cash infusion, it only took like 2 to 3 hours each time. They had to close the domestic stock market because all of that was evaporated, right?
Yep.
But that really wasn't evaporated. That money was traded.
Yeah.
So who made money? Do you know who made money in that case?
The traders, the people conducting the transactions, skimming.
Well, this is it. Fund managers. The only real money, the only real value that was created in those cases is that fund managers are the people who make the money that's made off of trade.
Yeah, the fees.
Got to put money. The fees, they got to put money in a bank account somewhere.
Yeah.
Now you cannot tell me that the Fed didn't know before infusing that money that was going to happen. And keep in mind that I don't know what the percentage is, so forgive me, but a solid number of trades every day done on the American stock market, on the U.S. stock market rather, are made by computer, and the computers aren't being manually managed by people. It's all algorithms that are controlling this. This accounts for the fact that we have such instability in the stock market.
Stopping Jen is laughing because one of the things I constantly complain about are these financial engineers who work for hedge funds and the stock market who write algorithms that siphon money out of our economy at the fraction of a millisecond all day long.
Like Office Space.
Yes. And
Yes.
in the beginning of that process, you probably know, like servers were literally put a mere inches from each other, physically closer to the market, because the fractions of a fraction of a second faster, they could get a leg up. And they were paying hundreds of millions of dollars in cases in real estate transactions just to be in the same building, but to be just an inch or two closer, right, to the New York Stock Exchange. Stupid. It's just a misuse of human capital, a misuse of technology.
Yeah.
Do we need any other physical manifestation of the golden calf and of false gods? It's just stupid.
Yeah, and people. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, so I know that this exists. You know that this exists.
Oh yeah.
And yet, and you know this. You have this in the back of your mind, and then you sit in your office, and you have people coming in who their goal is to. I'd like to start a cleaning company because, you know what? After I lost my $50 an hour paying job 15 years ago making furniture, I haven't been able to make more than $9 an hour since then. And I'm just sick and tired of it. And I just even if I don't make much money in business, I'd just like to feel like a man or a woman again.
Yeah, I want to have some
Dignity.
pride or a sense of purpose in life.
Yeah, and not just the money, but the meaning behind the work I do. Yeah. And I look at that and I say, how is it with all this monetary wealth going on and how arbitrary it is, it's ones and zeros? How is it that they can't share how much would it take to make everybody else
Equitable.
To put I'll put it
Fairly.
this way: to inject enough wealth into the tangible economy
Yeah.
that every one of those people could be making more than a comfortable living middle class wage.
No, everybody's
How
going to
much?
get $1,000 if you make less than 100,000. So you and I aren't going to get any money, right? And then they're going to get all these tax shelters out of all of this, and all the other people are just going to be left with nothing.
And
all of these small businesses, they get to take out a loan. That's what they get. That's their relief. That's the money that the feds are giving them, a loan.
And it goes
an
back,
interest-free loan.
and it goes back to
Well, remember,
Yeah.
Stumping Jen. This is a debt-based
Right.
economy.
exactly the extraction economy.
And this is where we turn this conversation around, right? What we have to do, because there's way more of us than there are of
Revolution.
right? So here's the thing.
Goddamn
and I,
fucking right.
Viva la revolution.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Viva la revolution. So you have this debt economy, and this is what has our elite scared, right? It's because when in a debt-based economy, when literally you have something that you can't control, like, I don't know, a pandemic, like something Mother Nature does,
Mhm.
right? This is why, by the way, we don't talk about climate change in a serious manner. It's not because it is, but it's not, because the best way to fight climate change is a decentralized series of energy systems, which is good for entrepreneurship but bad for major energy companies. It's
Right.
not because you change your transportation system. It's not because you drastically change major systems. It's that it's going to end the debt-based, the leveraged financial model of our economy. Because that makes a shit ton of money for the people at the very, very top. Because it can only be. It's trickle up.
Right.
Gutbucket
Right?
for president.
But the only way that system works is if it's actually working. Like, you can't take a break from it.
Right.
Because physically, somebody's got to pay somebody the debt to pay to this person, then pay to that person, pay to that person. So that's how it trickles up. So, I'm not saying that we find ways as long as possible to just stop the economy.
Mm-hmm.
But globally, we should all be seriously considering, this is the reason why unions are so despised, right? And that we're not supposed to like unions because, that's not even needed anymore. We don't need that. All you educated people, with your college educations, you don't need to join a union.
Yeah, and what's
Why do
interesting?
we need to have organized labor?
Yeah.
You don't need that anymore. That's for stupid people.
And as
right?
as a co-president of a union that represents primarily professional staff, right? These are people who do pretty well, right? Convincing these people that we actually need a union prior to the pandemic was often a challenge. But I will tell you,
Mhm.
as a result of this pandemic and some of the protections we were able to at least temporarily put into place for people, I've never seen so much engagement and recognition of the value that unions are providing than I'm seeing right now. It's amazing.
And because we've had it, generally speaking, enough of us have had it good enough for as long as we have.
Yeah.
If there's any good to come out of this, there's this massive sort of stop the insanity, stop the momentum of daily life, and then really seriously consider what counts. And this, by the way, is also another reason why, because we all, the three of us, share a lot of the same friends.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a conversation that, I can't remember his handle right now. What was we share friendship with the great warrior poet of where.
Oh, he's just Joshua Michael Stewart.
Joshua Michael Stewart.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
he doesn't have a handle.
He gave up the ghost and he went with his.
He wanted the promotion for his poetry.
He's so fucking famous. You know, he's the warrior. He's Joshua Michael Stewart, the warrior poet.
Yep,
that's what he is, man. You know, like he and I. So we grew up together, and one really positive thing to come out of our having, you know, come up together is the foundation on which we sort of built ourselves, right? This foundation of a deep sense of culture and of connection to that which came before us. And for us, you know, together, that was less about family, but more about, you know, culturally, like the music we played and the poetry and the writing that we both, you know, enjoyed and so forth. Right. But we're based in a solid foundation of that, right? Of this these oral traditions, right? That are who we are and stuff. Just if there's any good to come out of all of this process, I'm hoping that that a lot of people will get back to thinking about that. And about the importance of understanding what came before you and where you come from. And then, you know, like what kind of lessons you want to take from the past to reconstitute a better future. Yeah.
God, and what's that going to look like? You know, what I'm hoping.
And what is that going to look like? You know, well, you know what? So I'm 44. Stomping Jen is what you say? You're 36?
42. Oh, I 42. Wish he was 36.
Look at that. He just took off.
Oh, I just woke up. I remember 36-year-old Stomping Jen. What a spitfire. Woo!
Woo! That's the first time I've heard that word spitfire in a long time. But you know, like so here's the good news. Like this is up to us.
Yeah.
You know, the people older than us are just, you know, they're just broken people and they don't understand what they're reading on social media. So discount them entirely. Just get rid of them. They all need to just retire. And the people younger than us are ready to fight and but they need some perspective. They need some, you know, all right, let's hone what this is all going to look like. You know what I mean? I mean, the fact of the matter is, the reason right now why our guy isn't winning per se and Biden is getting the attention he's getting, besides just abject fear on the part of the elite, they're like, oh my God, we can't let these people have everything they've always wanted, is that, you know, I was listening the other night to there's an economist that I like. He's pretty much the only economist I like, but his name is Mark Blythe. He's entertaining as well as just, I happen to agree with a lot of what he says. And, you know, like he said, he's like, you know, until he uses an example of the suburbs of Atlanta. He said, until the upper middle class people in the suburbs of Atlanta listen to the message of Bernie and it resonates not just principally with them, but like to their daily life. Yeah. You know, at best, you have 11 to 14% of the population who are living what Bernie's talking about. Right.
And even, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I would say even, you know, there's a sizable amount of people in the middle class who on paper should be doing pretty well, right? But just feel like Sisyphus, you know, just pushing that boulder uphill and never able to get it up there, you know, and having to do it all over again, repeating the work, accumulate debt, pay off debt, work. And again, like on paper, these people, you know, seem like they should be doing pretty good, but really they are, they're debt slaves and they're living paycheck to paycheck and they're not materially different from, for whatever reason, people who weren't able, you know, to make the transition from a lower level economy into the middle class. And, you know, you're just an illness or a paycheck away from being totally broke. It's scary.
Well, and so until enough people who live paycheck to paycheck, regardless of their socioeconomic status, you know, because largely when we're just commonly in common vernacular, right? When we're just having a conversation, social economic status is he makes 50,000, he makes 130,000, right? That kind of thing, like gross revenue, right?
Mm-hmm.
But until we all realize that like 90% of us are living paycheck to paycheck, regardless of how much gross is coming in.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then the next step is people got to say, well, wait a minute. Like deep down inside, this is the hard part. Deep down inside, people have to realize, well, wait a minute, this doesn't have to be this way.
Right.
This is a man-made system. It's arbitrary, and actually, it's not all that old. It's like a half century old. It's not even a half century old. It's gradually been created a half century.
Mm-hmm.
Which is like a sketch in time. So this doesn't have to be this way.
No.
We can actually change it because there's way more freaking of us than there are the people in charge, and it's just a lot of wasted talent. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's people even of our generation that went to school, like their talents aren't being used to their optimum heights. You know what I mean? Because we just don't hear from them.
And I love,
Yeah,
and I love that you pointed out that it is a young system. It's young enough to kill, right? It almost got killed in 2008, but the federal government rescued it, right? Maybe with Mother Nature's help this time it'll be enough to kill it. I don't know, but something has got to change, right? We all agree on that. Can we agree on that, Stomping Jen? Mr. Gutbucket?
I agree with that.
All right.
I agree with that, man.
All right.
From the bottom of my bucket.
All right. You've got a deep bucket, too. I have a feeling you can go another hour.
Oh, my gosh.
We're going to have you back, Mr. Gutbucket. I'm going to play a song right now. We're at an hour and 40 minutes. Can you believe this?
Oh my God, are you kidding?
Holy shit.
Yeah.
What's the longest podcast you've ever had?
Over 3 hours, and we're not even going to try, Mr. Gutbucket. Stomping Jen's falling asleep over here. She's not really, but I could tell she's about to.
I am tired.
You are tired.
I am fatigued because I have the COVID-19.
I know. You know what I thought would be appropriate? To play, we mentioned the poet warrior Joshua Michael Stewart. He wrote a song called The Social Distancing Rag. So I'll play it. I think it's an instrumental. There might be some words in there. I'm not sure. Does a rag have words in it? Does anybody know?
It can have words. It can not have words.
Okay.
It's a rag, man.
Yep. All right. I'm gonna play the rag. We can chat a little bit over the rag, and then we'll wind down. Does that sound okay, Stomping Jen?
Sounds fine.
Gutbucket, you okay with that?
I'm along for the ride, man.
Okay. All right. And we'll have you back. What we should do is do a Gutbucket, Joshua Michael Stewart.
Josh Pearson. Rambling Blind Josh Pearson.
I don't know about Rambling if he would want to come on.
Yeah.
We'd have to talk to him.
Well, what nights?
That would be an epic podcast. That would be like doing a podcast. You take two ornery farmers and you just record them getting wasted on a 24-pack of Natty Light on the back of a pickup truck.
Sounds awesome.
Hey,
as
long as I can, I'll be the designated driver. I'm driving the board, Stomping Jen.
That's
right.
That's
so,
right.
all right, I'm gonna play the rag. Okay, talks amongst yourselves real quickly. I'm gonna hit this button.
Okay.
Hopefully, it works.
All right. Are you hitting the rag? Are you on the rag?
Whoa!
Ooh, it's very loud.
Okay, here we go.
The
rag is very loud.
Ooh, got a good signal coming in here.
Mm-hmm.
This is the social distancing rag by our bud, Joshua Michael Stewart. Mm-hmm. Love this guy. He's amazing.
We don't know if there's words.
We're gonna listen and find out. So, I know what I need to talk to you about, Gutbucket. Do you have Netflix?
I do.
Okay, so there's a movie I need you to watch, right? And we'll have you come back on and we'll talk about this. It's called The Platform. Okay? I posted about this on Facebook. Basically, it's a story about trickle-down resources and how horrible they are and they don't work. And it's a horrifying dystopian tale. I don't want to say much more, except the basic premise, which isn't a spoiler, is there's these people trapped in this giant tower, and there are two people on each floor of the tower. It's concrete floors, two concrete beds, a sink, and a toilet. And every day, a platform full of food descends from the top, and when it starts, It's completely full of the most glorious, delicious food you can imagine. And in theory, there's enough food to feed everybody on all of the levels. Don't say how many levels, Stomping Jen. And this platform descends to each level, and the two people on each level get like a minute to eat off of the platform, right? And as the platform goes lower and lower and lower down the tower, there becomes less food depending on how much food people at the top take, right? You get the metaphor.
Yeah.
It's an amazing, horrifying.
It's really, really graphic. So just
movie.
be aware. There's
Not
a lot of graphic violence in it.
Not good for kids. No words in the social distance. So I highly recommend that.
Interesting. We've thought about watching it and then passed over it, mostly because we have children and we fall asleep.
Okay.
So like 2 a.m, we wake up and we're like, fuck, we didn't watch anything the last 4 hours. We just didn't watch anything. But so I'll watch it. I will make a point to do that.
Yeah, if you get a chance. And it connects to a lot of the themes we talked about this evening in our podcast here together.
Yeah.
So
yeah. That was a break while we were watching The Tiger King.
Yeah, which was also very good. The Tiger King. That's entertaining. Anything you want to recommend?
Not appropriate for children.
I have to tell you, my wife is the TV watcher.
Okay.
Especially in these times, I'm pretty much sitting in my parlor and, writing essays and working on stuff and just listening to old jazz music, man.
I was going to say, you don't sound like a mind that watches a lot of TV. I wouldn't imagine that you have a lot of time for that.
Yeah, I'm not like against television or against, especially film. But
Sure.
Yeah, man, I'm usually reading 5 or 6 books at the same time, and
Yeah. Well, listen.
I sound like such a snob. I'm not a snob.
No, you don't sound like a snob at all.
Like
here's what you sound like: somebody who's thinking about
curious about the world,
but also thinking about their community and what they can do to help turn around this horrible social and economic situation we have found ourselves trapped in. That's what you sound like to me. So thank you for that. And thank you for coming on. I also want to, before we go, I want to thank again. We did this at the beginning before you came on. I want to thank all of the people out there on the front lines who are working during this pandemic to try to keep society running. So those are our healthcare workers, our first responders, the people doing the hard work of running and maintaining and delivering our supplies, right? Grocery store workers who are getting us food, pharmacy workers, retail people who are coming in every day. What do you think? Who am I missing?
Local
Gutbucket.
Local farms.
Local
farms that are producing
farms.
the food that we enjoy.
Yep. I said it last week. The most important podcast hosts. They're the most important people in a pandemic.
You know what? I think it's important for us to say to everybody right now that's feeling isolated.
Yeah.
Right? And that was feeling isolated before, and this has only exacerbated all that. People have to remember something and take this to heart, that I don't care who you are, I don't care what situation you're in, you are loved.
Mm-hmm.
God damn it, thank you.
You are valued and you are loved. And I mean that very sincerely, especially in these times.
That is a wonderful sentiment to end on, Mr. Gutbucket. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna hit the outro music, Gutbucket. You feel free to hang up. And again, thank you for coming on. We really appreciate the time you spent with us. And to reiterate what Mr. Gutbucket said, we love you, everybody.
We love you.
Stay safe, stay healthy.
Stay safe.
We're gonna keep doing this. We're gonna keep talking about this pandemic. We want to be there for you. So, we love you. Right, Stomping Jen?
Yep, we do.
Okay. Bye, Mr. Gutbucket. Thanks again.
You guys keep groovy. Take care.
Okay, take care, man.
world of ours, ever growing smaller, must avoid becoming a community of dreadful fear and hate. Those who have freedom will understand also its heavy responsibility. That all who are insensitive to the needs of others will learn charity, and that the sources, scourges of poverty, disease, and ignorance will be made disappear from the earth. And that in the goodness of time, all peoples will come to live together in a peace guaranteed